"Don't be afraid," whispered the Mafia boss. "I'm the monster who'll keep you safe." Snow dusted the edge of the sidewalk outside the Ledger's glass building. Christmas lights blinked weakly across the street, reflecting off the wet asphalt. It was almost midnight, too quiet for Manhattan, too dangerous for a story like this. Elena Carver stood by her car, the phone pressed to her ear, her free hand trembling as she scrolled through the files glowing on her laptop screen inside the open passenger door. Her breath fogged in the freezing air. "Morgan," she whispered, voice tight, "you have no idea what's in these files. This isn't just corporate fraud. Morenza Holdings is laundering political money, campaign funds. There's a senator's name on the document." Then her editor's voice cut in, urgent, almost panicked. "Elena, if this is real, it's real." She cut him off. "If I send this, they'll— Elena, listen to me. Calm down and come home immediately. We will discuss this later before you confirm with me that you are really—" The line went dead. Then the world exploded. The blast shattered the night, a wave of fire and thunder ripping through the narrow street. The shockwave flung Elena backward. Her body hit the pavement hard. For a moment she saw nothing but white light and heard nothing but the ringing in her ears. When she opened her eyes, her car was a fireball. Flames roared out of the windows, reaching up like grasping hands. Heat seared her face. Shards of glass glittered in her hair. She tried to move, coughing, choking on smoke. Pain shot through her chest with every breath. The air tasted like metal and gasoline. "Help!" Her voice came out as a rasp. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate. Through the haze, a dark shape approached. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, coat flapping against the wind. His outline flickered in the orange glow, unreal, like a shadow stepping out of hell. He moved fast. Before she could crawl away, his gloved hands caught her shoulders, dragging her clear of the wreckage just as the fuel tank ruptured with another roar of flame. "Let me go!" she gasped, trying to fight him off. "Stop moving!" His voice was deep, low, commanding. He pulled her into the shelter of a nearby alley, away from the blast. Steam rose from his coat, black with soot. For a second their eyes met. His gray, steady, unreadable. "Who are you?" "Doesn't matter." She shivered violently. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her. It smelled of gunpowder and smoke, and something faintly clean like rain. "Don't be afraid," he said quietly, his tone softer now, almost a whisper. "I'm the monster who'll keep you safe." The words barely made sense, but they steadied her heartbeat. Sirens began to scream somewhere down the street. Police, fire, ambulance. Blue and red lights flickered against the snow-dusted walls. He looked over his shoulder, calculating. "They'll be here in 30 seconds, and so will the ones who planted that bomb." She tried to focus on his face, but her vision was swimming. "Why would you help me?" His jaw tightened. "Because he asked me to." "Who?" But her voice faltered. The world tilted. The pain in her chest pulsed harder. He caught her as she collapsed, his arms strong, sure. The snow had started falling in earnest now. Thick, slow flakes swirling through the smoke. "You're safe now," he murmured, though his voice carried something darker. Regret or guilt. As she slipped into unconsciousness, she caught one last glimpse of him. The reflection of firelight in his eyes, a man who looked too calm standing in the ruins. When the paramedics reached the burning street, they found nothing but twisted metal, the remains of a car fire, and a phone cracked open on the ground, still connected to a call that ended in static. 2 sets of footprints disappeared into the falling snow, and New York swallowed the noise again, as if nothing had happened. But in the alley's shadows, a man with smoke on his skin disappeared into the falling snow. A phantom carrying the woman who had just seen death and didn't yet know she'd met the devil who would save her. When Elena opened her eyes, the world was no longer on fire. Soft light spilled across a wide ceiling, pale gold coming from a chandelier instead of flames. The faint hum of jazz floated in the air, a slow, steady heartbeat against the silence. For a second she thought she was dreaming, but the dull ache in her ribs told her otherwise. She sat up too fast. Pain lanced through her shoulder. The sheets beneath her were silk, white, cool, and far too expensive for anywhere she'd ever been. Snow fell in lazy spirals beyond the tall glass windows. The Hudson River glimmered in the distance, black and endless beneath the winter sky. A penthouse, Her pulse spiked. She reached for her phone. Gone. Her bag, her laptop, everything. Gone. "Hello?" she called out, voice hoarse. No answer. She climbed out of bed, bare feet meeting polished marble. She tried the door. Locked. Another door led to a bathroom, pristine and sterile. Towels folded like hotel origami. No escape. Her throat tightened. Her mind replayed fragments of the explosion. The fire, the man's voice, the weight of his coat. "I'm the monster who'll keep you safe. Elena Carver." She froze. The voice came from behind her. Calm, smooth, with a hint of something unspoken beneath. She turned. He stood by the window, half turned toward the snow. Black sweater, sleeves rolled to his forearms. No smoke now. No firelight, but the same gray eyes. Steady. Watchful. Her chest clenched. "You." He inclined his head slightly as if acknowledging a fact rather than an accusation. "You're awake. Where am I?" "Somewhere no one can find you." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you need." He crossed the room slowly, movements precise, deliberate. There was no threat in his body language, yet everything about him radiated control, like a man used to commanding silence. Her back hit the wall before she realized she'd stepped away from him. He stopped a few feet short, voice even. "If you walk out that door, they'll finish what they started. Morenza doesn't leave loose ends." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "And you do? What are you, some kind of vigilante?" He gave a faint, humorless smile. "No, I'm much worse." Her pulse jumped. "Then why save me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to a low table beside the couch. Papers were scattered there, neat stacks, but the names printed on them made her stomach drop. Morenza Holdings. The same files she'd been investigating. Her voice trembled. "These things, you are also investigating them?" He looked up at her, eyes unreadable. "You were sloppy. They traced your calls. By the time you pressed send, you were already a target. You hacked my investigation. I protected you from it, Elena." She stared at him. Every word he said was both absurd and frighteningly logical. Finally, she demanded, "Who are you?" His jaw tightened. "Ethan Moretti." The name hit her like another explosion, one she felt behind her ribs. Moretti. She knew that name. The rumors, the cases. Her brother's last report before he vanished 3 years ago had mentioned it. Her mouth went dry. "You're lying. Ethan Moretti's a ghost. The NYPD says he's dead." His expression didn't change. "They say that about a lot of people." The air between them thickened, cold from the window, hot from her fear. She took a step closer, whispering, "My brother died investigating you." Something flickered across his face. Not guilt exactly, but recognition. "Daniel Carver," he said quietly. "He was a good man." Her stomach twisted. "You knew him?" He nodded once. "Better than you think." Before she could speak again, he turned away, picking up a kettle from the bar counter. The faint sound of water pouring broke the silence. "I made tea," he said, his tone unexpectedly soft. "You lost a lot of blood. Sit." "I'm not drinking anything you make." He didn't argue. He simply poured, the steam curling upward. When he approached, he set the cup on the nightstand beside her, careful not to touch her. She hesitated, torn between anger and exhaustion. "What is this, some kind of game? You kidnap me, then serve tea?" His answer came low, steady, almost tender. "No. I think you're cold. You're shivering, Kaif." She was stunned, and the room went still. She looked at him, at the man everyone called a monster, and felt the strangest thing. Not safety, not yet, but the first crack in her fear. Night fell heavy over the Hudson. The snow had stopped, but the city still glowed through the windows. Gold. Distant, untouchable. Elena hadn't slept. She sat by the edge of the bed, clutching the blanket like a shield, watching the door. Somewhere beyond it, she could hear Ethan moving. Calm, deliberate, every sound too controlled to be human. He hadn't spoken since that single sentence hours ago. "Because you're shaking." It had echoed in her mind long after the tea went cold. Now the penthouse was wrapped in quiet, the kind of quiet that hid secrets. Her eyes caught a faint glimmer across the room, a sliver of light seeping from beneath a door half cracked open. She rose slowly, barefoot on marble, each step deliberate. The air smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. The door led to an office. Inside, the space was all steel and glass. Wide desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and shelves lined with books and files. Too organized for chaos, too meticulous for innocence. Her pulse quickened. She moved closer to the desk. Papers were stacked neatly, but one folder lay apart, half open. On top of it, a photograph. Her breath caught. It was Daniel, her brother, smiling. He stood beside Ethan, both men in tactical gear. A map of the Morenza Holdings network spread across the wall behind them, written in black marker. Across the top, Operation Silent Night. Elena's throat closed. Her trembling fingers touched the photo's edge, tracing Daniel's face. Alive, confident, full of purpose. Not the image she'd carried for years of his lifeless body under a white sheet. Her voice broke in the empty room. "What the hell is this?" She flipped through the rest of the folder. Reports, notes, surveillance photos. All dated 3 years ago. All tied to the same operation. And every single one carried her brother's handwriting in the margins. A single paragraph stood out, underlined twice. "If anything happens to me, trust Moretti. He knows what's coming." The paper trembled in her hands. Behind her, a voice said quietly, "You weren't supposed to see that." Elena spun. Ethan stood in the doorway, half shadowed by the city lights, expression unreadable. Her chest heaved. "You worked with my brother." He didn't answer. "Say it." He exhaled slowly. "Yes. Why? Why didn't I ever know?" "Because he didn't want you involved. He lied to me." "No," Ethan said, stepping forward, voice low but steady. "He protected you. He knew Morenza had a leak inside the department, someone feeding them every move the task force made. He couldn't risk your name showing up anywhere near it." Elena shook her head. "No, that's impossible, Daniel. He would have told me everything." "He almost did," Ethan murmured. "Right before the night he died." The words hit her like another explosion, quieter but deeper. Her knees weakened. She gripped the desk for balance. "You were there." He nodded once. "He saved my life. A car bomb, meant for me. He pushed me clear before it detonated." Elena pressed a hand to her mouth, tears stinging hot. "I tried to pull him out," Ethan continued, voice rough now, cracking at the edges. "But the fire..." He stopped. The silence that followed said the rest. She turned away, staring at the photo again. "So that's it? He dies saving you and you disappear?" "I had to. Morenza thought I was dead. It was the only way to keep his work alive." She laughed bitterly, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Alive? He's gone. I buried him. You kept files." He stepped closer, until he was near enough for her to feel the weight of his regret. "You think I don't know what that costs?" His tone sharpened, a flash of the man the world feared. Then it softened again. "He asked me for one thing, Elena, to keep you out of this." She met his eyes, voice trembling. "Why would he trust a criminal?" "Because I owed him my life." For a moment the world seemed to still. The snow outside caught in the city's reflection, falling like silent ghosts across the glass. Ethan reached into a drawer and took out a small, worn notebook. The cover was scorched at the edges, pages yellowed. He handed it to her without a word. Her fingers brushed his as she took it. Rough skin, calloused, too warm. She opened the notebook, and the first thing she saw was Daniel's handwriting. "If I disappear, don't let her chase ghosts. Keep her safe, even from the truth." The words blurred through her tears. Her voice cracked. He knew. He knew he wouldn't come back. Ethan didn't move closer, but his voice dropped, soft enough that she almost missed it. "He was the best man I ever met. You're all he ever talked about." Outside, the wind howled against the glass. Not violent, but mournful. The city lights trembled on the Hudson like candle flames. Elena wiped her face, her anger fraying into something else. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a grief that had finally found a shape. She looked at Ethan, really looked at him. The monster, the ghost, the man her brother had once trusted. And for the first time, she didn't see danger. She saw a man haunted by the same loss that had devoured her. Neither spoke. Only the sound of the storm answered them. A fragile silence between two people bound by the same dead man and the truth that refused to stay buried. The storm outside had calmed, but inside the penthouse the air felt ready to break. Elena sat on the edge of the couch, Daniel's notebook still open in her hands. The pages trembled, the words blurring where her tears had fallen. Across the room, Ethan leaned against the window, cigarette burning low between his fingers, eyes fixed on the skyline. Neither of them had spoken for a long time. The silence between them was no longer hostile, just heavy, fragile. "You should get some sleep," he said finally without turning. "I don't think I can," she whispered. He nodded once as if he understood too well. "Then just rest. The city's quieter at night, they won't move yet." "They?" He didn't answer. She set the notebook down, her heart still hammering. "You said Morenza thinks you're dead, but if they find out you're not, they will." He cut in softly. "They always do." Before she could respond, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the penthouse plunged into darkness. The air shifted. The kind of silence that screams before the shot. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Get down!" "What?" Glass shattered. A bullet tore through the window behind him. Another struck the chandelier, sending sparks raining through the dark. "Move," he hissed. Elena dove behind the bookshelf as another round cracked through the air. She pressed her hands over her ears, the sharp smell of gunpowder flooding her lungs. Somewhere in the dark, Ethan's gun barked twice. Clean, controlled, like punctuation. The firefight was short, brutal. Footsteps pounded across marble. A grunt, the dull thud of a body hitting the floor. Then silence again, except for her ragged breathing. "Elena," his voice came low. "Closer. You're all right." A flick of light, a lighter's flame. It danced briefly over Ethan's face, streaked with sweat and blood. He was alive, but his shoulder was bleeding. She crawled out from behind the shelf, trembling. "What just happened?" "They found me," he said simply, reloading with steady hands. "Or maybe they found you." She looked at the bodies. 2 men in black sprawled near the window, their weapons glinting in the half-light. The carpet was dark with blood soaking into the white fur rug. Her stomach turned. You killed them." "I saved you," he corrected, voice quiet. He saw the horror in her eyes and softened. "You don't get used to it. No one does." He tore a strip from his sleeve, pressing it against his wound. When he looked at her again, his voice dropped into something she'd never heard from him before. Raw, unguarded. "I promised Daniel I'd never let you see blood." Her breath caught. He exhaled slowly, the weight of years in that single motion. "Guess I broke that too." She stared at him, the room spinning between fear and something else. Compassion, maybe. The kind that sneaks in when you least expect it. She moved closer, gently taking the cloth from his hand. "Let me," she whispered. He didn't protest. Her hands trembled as she tied the fabric tighter around his shoulder. He winced but didn't pull away. For the first time, he looked vulnerable, human. When she finished, their faces were inches apart. She could feel the heat of him, smell the faint trace of smoke and rain on his skin. He started to lean in, then stopped. His jaw tightened. "If I touch you," he murmured, "you won't be safe anymore." Her eyes glistened. "Maybe safety isn't what I need right now." He smiled, just barely. A sad curve that held more pain than joy, then turned away. "Don't say that. You don't know what I've done." She wanted to argue, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she looked around the wreckage, the broken glass, the blood, the quiet that followed violence, and understood what he meant. Later that night, after the bodies were gone and the penthouse sealed in darkness again, Ethan found the old tape recorder Daniel had once used. Its casing was cracked, the reels jammed. He sat at the kitchen counter, fixing it by lamplight, every movement slow, precise. When Elena woke the next morning, it sat beside her bed, working. She pressed play. The tape clicked, hissed, then a voice filled the air. Daniel's voice, laughing, easy, alive. "If you're hearing this, it means your big brother finally kept his word. So stop crying, kid, you're safe." Her hand flew to her mouth as the tears came, silent, unstoppable. At the door, unseen, Ethan stood in shadow. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just listened. To her sobs, to her brother's voice, to the one thing he could still give her. In the silence that followed, something shifted. Not forgiveness, not love, but the beginning of both. Morning came gray and brittle, the kind of light that never reached warmth. Elena stood by the window, watching the Hudson freeze in slow motion. The city below was awake again, honking, breathing, pretending nothing had burned the night before. Behind her, Ethan was at his desk, typing with the precision of a man who never wasted motion. He hadn't slept. His wound was bandaged, his expression unreadable. "You're leaving," she said quietly. He didn't look up. "I'm finishing what Daniel started." "You mean exposing Morenza? And the one who sold him out?" he said. His tone was colder now, stripped of the gentleness he'd shown her. "A leak inside the organization. Someone who's been feeding the FBI, giving them just enough to keep their hands clean while we do the killing for them." Elena turned. "You think it's someone close to you?" "I know it is." Before she could speak, a sharp buzz cut through the silence. Ethan's phone. He picked it up, listened for a few seconds, then nodded once. "Rico wants to meet," he said finally. "Claims he has the final piece of evidence. Says he's ready to end this." Something about the way he said it made Elena's stomach knot. "Ethan, that doesn't sound right. You said Rico's been nervous for weeks. Why now?" He looked at her, and for a flicker of a second she saw hesitation in his eyes. Then it vanished behind the wall he always built. "It's the only lead we have left. If he's playing both sides, I need to see it myself." "Then don't go alone. I'm not dragging you into another firefight. I already am in this," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "If something happens," he crossed to her, pressing his hands lightly to her shoulders. "If something happens, you run. You disappear. Promise me." She didn't answer. He smiled, small, sad. "You sound just like your brother." Then he was gone. The underground parking garage smelled of oil and cold steel. The echo of Ethan's boots bounced off concrete pillars as he walked in, the shadows stretching long under flickering lights. A black SUV idled near the far wall. Rico stepped out, broad, confident, the silver chain at his throat glinting as he raised a hand in greeting. "Boss," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't think you'd actually show." Ethan stopped 5 paces short. "You said you had something." "I do. Proof that Morenza's pulling strings inside the bureau. You'll want to see this." Rico tossed him a USB drive. Ethan caught it, but his gaze didn't leave the man. Something in Rico's stance, too relaxed, too careful, felt wrong. Ethan's voice dropped. "Who else is here?" "Just me," Rico said. Well, and them." The gunfire erupted before the word finished leaving his mouth. Ethan dove behind a pillar, returning fire. The noise ricocheted through the garage, a storm of metal and echo, bullets sparked against concrete. Rico's laughter carried over the chaos. "You should have stayed dead, old friend." Ethan moved like muscle memory, precise, ruthless. 2 men fell, but there were more, too many. Then, a sound he hadn't expected. "Ethan!" He turned. Elena. She was crouched behind a parked car near the entrance, eyes wide, clutching a phone. "It's a trap!" she screamed. He swore under his breath, firing at a man trying to flank her. "I told you to stay away." "Too late for that." A bullet tore through the air. He shoved her down, felt the impact slam into his shoulder. The world blinked white. He hit the ground hard, blood spreading fast across his shirt. "Ethan!" She crawled to him, pulling at his jacket, pressing her hands over the wound. Her fingers came away red. "Don't you dare!" He caught her wrist, voice barely above a whisper. "I already failed Daniel once. I can't." He coughed, the sound harsh, wet. "I can't fail you too. Run, Elena." "No." Tears streamed down her face. "No, I'm not leaving you. Please." His grip weakened, but his eyes, those gray, unflinching eyes, stayed on her. "Go. Finish what he started." She shook her head, then did the one thing she knew Daniel would have done. She fought back. With shaking hands, she opened her phone and went live. "My name is Elena Carver," she said into the camera, her voice trembling but clear. "This is the truth Morenza tried to bury." She dropped the USB into view, the files Rico had given Ethan, and hit upload. Names, transactions, bank trails, everything. In less than a minute, the feed went viral. Rico's face twisted as he realized what she'd done. "You stupid girl!" He didn't finish. Ethan, with the last of his strength, raised his gun and fired once. The shot echoed through the garage. Rico collapsed. Sirens wailed above, distant, growing louder. Elena looked down at Ethan, her tears falling onto his face. "Stay with me," he smiled faintly. "Told you, and you're safe now." Then his hand slipped from hers. "Ethan!" she cried, shaking him, but his eyes had already closed. The sound of boots, shouts, the crash of FBI agents flooding in, it all blurred into static. When she finally looked down again, Ethan was gone, only blood on the concrete, and beside it a cracked wristwatch, the initials DC engraved on the back. She clutched it to her chest as the sirens swallowed the night. Outside, snow began to fall again. Slow, silent, indifferent. A week passed. New York was blanketed in snow, thick, clean, merciless. The kind that covered everything: blood, headlines, memory. For most, it was just another December. For Elena Carver, it was the quiet after the scream. The world called her a hero. Journalist exposes political mafia collusion. Morenza Holdings falls amid corruption scandal. Her face was on every morning broadcast. Her article on every major outlet. They called her brave. They said she had brought light into the dark. But in her apartment, the light felt colder than the dark ever had. The morning news flickered on her TV, the anchor's voice bright and hollow. In an unexpected twist to the Morenza investigation, the organization's collapse has led to over 30 arrests. Former consigliere Rico Santoro was found dead in his cell last night, sources citing gang retaliation. Authorities have confirmed the death of Ethan Moretti, the alleged underworld figure, linked to both Morenza and the Carver operation. His body was never recovered, though DNA evidence at the scene. Elena muted the TV. She sat in silence, wrapped in Daniel's old coat, staring at the city beyond her window. Snowflakes drifted against the glass, catching the glow of Christmas lights that shimmered across the street. Each color pulsed softly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat fading in the distance. Outside, the city was celebrating. Inside, everything was still. The apartment felt smaller than she remembered, empty in a way that had nothing to do with space. The air carried the faint scent of smoke and coffee. It was all that was left of him. On the table before her lay the cracked wristwatch. The metal was cold under her fingers. DC on Daniel Carver, her brother. The one promise that had bound 3 lives together and destroyed 2 of them. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her gaze fell on the steel box in the corner, dented, rusted, sealed shut since the day her brother died. She'd never had the courage to open it before, not until now. The lock gave way with a reluctant click. Inside were a few things: a folded envelope, a lighter, a photo. She picked up the picture first. Daniel stood at a dock, the Hudson behind him, grin wide and careless. Next to him, Ethan, younger, his arm slung casually over Daniel's shoulder. Both looked sunlit, alive, untouched by the world they would later try to fix. Elena turned the photo over. On the back, written in Daniel's familiar handwriting, were 6 words: "Trust him. He'll keep you safe." Her vision blurred. A sound escaped her. Not quite a sob, not quite a breath. Just the noise of a heart remembering how to break. She traced Ethan's face with her thumb. The same man who had dragged her from fire, who'd killed to protect her. Who'd whispered, "I'm the monster who'll keep you safe." The monster who disappeared into the snow. She unfolded the envelope. Inside was a single note in Daniel's handwriting, dated 3 years ago. "If you ever find this, it means I couldn't finish what I started. But if he's still alive, he will. Don't run from him, Elena. The world doesn't need another truth-teller. It needs someone who can forgive." Her tears came freely now, streaking down her face and dripping onto the page. Forgive. Such a simple word. Such a cruel one. She set the letter aside and stared out the window again. The snow outside was falling thicker, turning the city into a watercolor of white and gold. Somewhere, faint and far, a church bell began to ring, soft, almost hesitant. She laughed quietly through the tears. "You'd love that sound, Danny," she whispered. "You always said Christmas bells were the world's way of pretending everything's fine." The bell tolled again, echoing through the streets like a heartbeat. She looked down at the photograph once more, at the 2 men. One gives her faith in justice, the other, though she just met, knows her better than she knows herself. And for the first time she didn't feel angry, only empty, and in that emptiness a strange peace. She placed the photograph on her desk beside the watch. Outside, the snow reflected the colored lights from a building across the street. Red, green, gold, painting her walls with fleeting warmth. Elena sat there until the bells stopped ringing, the silence folding over her like a blanket. She whispered into it, soft but certain, "Thank you." Both of you. The snow fell harder, muting the world to stillness. In the faint reflection on the window, her own image blurred with the city lights. One woman surrounded by ghosts, yet somehow still breathing. The headline from the ledger lay open beside her coffee cup. The letters glimmered faintly under the Christmas lights. "The Monster Who Kept Me Safe," by Elena Carver. She exhaled, closed her eyes, and let the quiet take her. Outside, the bells faded into snow. Christmas Eve. The city was wrapped in lights. Gold, green, red, strung across the skyline like constellations pretending to be human. The Hudson shimmered beneath them, glassy and still, holding the reflection of a world too busy celebrating to remember what it had lost. Inside her apartment, Elena sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop screen painting her face in cold light. The cursor blinked on an empty document. Then slowly words began to appear beneath her trembling fingers. "There are people who live in the dark so others don't have to. They are not saints. They are not monsters. Sometimes they are both." She paused, exhaling. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the radiator and the muffled laughter of strangers down on the street. The clock on her wall read 11:45. Almost midnight, almost Christmas. She leaned back, reading the last line she'd written, the ending of her final story. "This is for those who never make it home, and for the ones who still try." Her hand hovered over the keyboard, ready to save. Then ding-dong. The sound sliced through the quiet like a heartbeat returning after a long pause. Elena froze. No one was supposed to visit. Not tonight. Not ever. For a moment she thought she'd imagined it. But then, ding-dong. She rose slowly, her pulse hammering, her body remembering fear before her mind caught up. The city's glow shimmered across the hallway as she reached for the door. Her fingers brushed the handle. She hesitated. Something, instinct, memory, hope, whispered, "Open it." The door swung wide, and there he was. Ethan, alive. He stood in the doorway, a dark silhouette against the snow. His black coat was dusted white, his hair longer now, his face thinner. But those eyes, those gray, steady eyes that had watched her from firelight and shadow. Her lips parted, but no sound came. "You," she breathed. "You're alive?" His voice was the same, quiet, unhurried, a low thunder beneath the surface. He smiled faintly. "Not easy to kill a monster, remember?" The words hit her like a memory she'd been trying to forget. "Don't be afraid. I'm the monster who'll keep you safe." Tears welled before she could stop them. "I saw the blood. They said I needed them to." He stepped closer, his breath fogging in the cold air. "The FBI wanted a body. I gave them one that looked enough like mine." "Why?" she whispered. "Because if they thought I was alive, they'd never stop coming for you." Her throat closed around the ache that rose in her chest. "You disappeared. You let me believe you were dead." "I had to." His voice softened, breaking. "It was the only way you'd be free." For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The snow outside glowed pale through the hall's light, falling like dust from heaven. Finally, he held out his hand. "Come with me. There's something I need to show you." Her mind screamed no, but her heart had already stood up. They walked through the sleeping city, their footsteps the only sound on the snow-packed sidewalk. The Hudson glimmered ahead, vast, silent, alive with the reflections of fireworks beginning to bloom over the skyline. Ethan stopped near the railing, the river stretching endlessly before them. The air smelled of smoke and frost. Elena watched the fireworks paint the sky red and gold. "Why here?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze was fixed on the water, the same river where Daniel's body had once been pulled from. Finally he spoke, voice raw but steady. 3 years ago, your brother and I promised each other something." She turned to him, the cold biting at her cheeks. "What promise?" He looked at her then, truly looked. "I told him I'd bring him home for Christmas, that we'd both make it back." Her heart clenched. "But you didn't." "No." His breath came out in white plumes. "He kept me alive instead." He took a small step closer. "Tonight, I'm keeping my promise. Just not the way I thought." Her voice was a whisper. "What do you mean?" He reached out, hesitating, as if touching her might shatter something holy. Then his hand closed around hers, warm against the cold. "I can't give him back to you, Elena, but I can give you what he wanted most, to know you're safe." Tears blurred her vision again. "You already did." Ethan smiled, tired, soft, like a man who had finally laid down a weapon he'd carried too long. He leaned forward slightly, his voice barely audible above the distant hum of fireworks. I've made too many promises I couldn't keep, but this one, just let me keep it. He raised a hand, brushing the snow from her hair, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Not passion, not possession, but something deeper. A benediction. The world around them exploded in color, bursts of gold and silver reflected in the water below. For a long time, neither spoke. The snow kept falling soft and endless. When she finally looked up, she saw him watching her. A faint smile, eyes full of something that looked almost like peace. She squeezed his hand, whispering through the tears, "You kept your promise, Ethan. You brought him home." He didn't answer, just held her hand tighter, his gaze lifting to the sky where fireworks bloomed like dying stars. The world was loud again, but between them there was only silence, the kind that feels like forever. The fireworks began to fade. One by one, their echoes dissolved into the night, leaving behind nothing but falling snow and the hush of the Hudson breathing against the shore. Ethan's hand was still in hers, solid, warm, impossibly real. She wanted to hold on forever, afraid that if she let go, he'd vanish back into the dark he'd crawled out of. He turned to her, snow clinging to his lashes like frost. The chaos that once lived in his eyes was gone. In its place, a quiet that felt earned. "Elena," he said softly, "you can stop running now." She shook her head, voice trembling. "I wasn't running." He smiled, faint, knowing. Everyone runs from something, even monsters. For a heartbeat, the world was utterly still. No gunfire, no lies. Just two people who had lost everything and somehow found each other in the wreckage. She stepped closer, her breath mingling with him in the cold. "You don't have to disappear again." "I do," he whispered. "The world doesn't forgive men like me, but you—" His thumb brushed a tear from her cheek, gentle as falling snow. "You were never meant to stay in the dark." Her throat tightened. "Where will you go?" He glanced out at the water where the final sparks of light drifted down, dissolving into the river. "Someplace quiet, somewhere no one remembers my name." He looked back at her, eyes soft. "But tonight, I wanted to remember what it feels like to be human." She swallowed hard, her hand tightening around his. "You are human, Ethan." He gave a low laugh, almost to himself. "Not tonight. Tonight I'm just keeping a promise." The sky dimmed. The last firework burst high above them, a single streak of silver that cracked the clouds and fell apart like starlight. She lifted her gaze to it, tears glistening in her eyes. "You kept your word," she murmured. "Both of you did." Her fingers brushed his, and for an instant everything, the snow, the river, the ghosts, fell away. There was only peace. He leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Tell the world what he died for, but keep what we had between us." She nodded. "I promise." He kissed her forehead again, a final wordless prayer, and when he stepped back, the wind rose, carrying snow between them like mist. When she opened her eyes, he was gone. Only the river remained, endless and patient, swallowing every sound. Elena stood alone for a long time, watching the water move as if expecting him to step out of it once more. But the night stayed quiet. Finally, she turned back toward the city. The bells had begun to ring again, deep, resonant, echoing through the streets like forgiveness. Back in her apartment, she laid her gloves beside the old photograph on her desk. Daniel and Ethan side by side, forever caught in the sunlight of another life. She opened her laptop. The headline of the ledger glowed on the screen. "The Monster Who Kept Me Safe" by Elena Carver. She read the title once, then closed the computer gently. She said to herself, he will come back, even if it's the weakest part. She still wants him to come back, to pick her up, to protect her according to the promise. Outside the window, snow drifted over the city like ash and angel. The bells of St. Andrew rang at midnight. Elena smiled faintly and whispered to the night, "You kept your promise, Ethan. Now I'll keep mine." The wind caught the edge of a forgotten newspaper on the street below, flipping it open as it danced through the snow. Its front page shimmered under the streetlights. "The Monster Who Kept Me Safe." And then the lights went out, leaving only the sound of the river and the quiet, eternal echo of Christmas bells. Elena, the fearless reporter chasing truth. Ethan, the mafia boss who chose to protect her instead of power. He saved her life. She saved his soul. Together they proved even monsters can love, and even the broken can keep a promise. When the last bell of Christmas rang, their story became legend. And this was only one story. Subscribe to Mafia Boss Love Stories now to explore more romances born from bullets and justice, where love dares to bloom in the crossfire between darkness and light.